Hello, and welcome to a Ghostly Encounter Live. This is another edition of Ghost Stories with Ghost Guides. I am your ghost guide. My name is Renee, and this is...
Dusty!
I was like, did you forget your
That's
name?
it.
Our guest is
Nope,
Dusty again. Back at it again, Dusty. I was going to say with the white shoes, but I feel like only people my age would get that joke. Anyway, so Dusty, tonight we're gonna be talking about a few different things. A lot of blood and gore going on tonight on our live stream, Dusty. A lot of what happened? There we go. We're talking about Elizabeth Bathory. I always want to say Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory. We're talking about vampires of all things. And I know some of you just rolled your eyes and said, vampires? But we're talking about vampires, and we're talking about a local story. Some of y'all who've been on our tours know it. Some of you guys that just know the area might know it. It's the Love Tree Cottage. So before we get to all of that, we're going to go ahead and talk about a new segment that was an idea sent in by one of our viewers. This was an idea from Nicole Aguilar. She said that we should do like people's personal hauntings, like personal stories sent in from them. And we are going to call this new segment The Haunted Happening. Jim, it is from Kurt Meyer, who is a tour guide in the city, and he sent us a really interesting picture from the Jose Tovar house, which Jim is going to pull up here in just a second. It'll pop up on the screen. So he was riding his carriage, and he happened to see a fellow tour guide of his, and the tour guide was standing in front of the Jose Tovar house and decided to show him an interesting picture, the picture that y'all are looking at here. So it's said that this might be a Native American spirit coming down the stairs. There's definitely something coming down that staircase. What do you think, Dusty?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the sun.
No, it's not. It's definitely not the sun. There happens to be an anomaly there, some sort of strange light anomaly.
It looks like one of those old-time scuba divers with the big helmet.
It looks like it's crawling down the stairs, which is a little unsettling, to be completely honest.
Style?
Yeah, a little bit, right? Ooh. The more I look at it, the more I'm like, I don't know if I like how it's descending down the staircase. Or maybe it's going up. Maybe it's just
crawling up
perception.
The stairs.
Yeah, it's crawling up the stairs. Listen, yeah. So interesting photo sent in by Kurt. Thank you, Kurt, for sharing with us. And if you guys have any haunted photos to send in, please send them to us via Facebook Messenger. You can always reach out to me, Dusty, or even just Jim, or our regular old Facebook. Any of those will work, all right? The next two haunted happenings that were sent in were messages, which are really crazy. The next one I'm going to read was from my cousin, and I remember this house. I know exactly what she's talking about, and I can attest that this place was haunted. So let me tell you what she had to say. This is from my cousin Brianna, and it says, in quotes, "So, I guess everything started when I was about 4. It was the first night that we spent in the house, and I remember it was about 11:30 to midnight. And I woke up because I felt like I was being watched. So I looked over and I saw this little boy in a green shirt, and he always had a very, very red baseball cap on. And I just started screaming and crying. So my dad came to see what was wrong, and he told me to stay in the living room, and I told him that there was this boy in my room. But I stayed out in the living room until I was calm because I didn't want to go back into my bedroom for the rest of the night. I had lost track of time and days in that house, and so sometime later in that week, the little boy brought back a man with him. And every night since, the little boy and that man would watch me while I slept. The man would always be in the bathroom coming into my room. I remember one night I decided to follow him out of curiosity, and he went into the bathroom. He would always walk between the bathroom and my bedroom throughout the night, and the boy always stayed directly next to me watching me. We had this cupboard in the bathroom for blankets and towels, and I remember that I followed him into the cupboard and I got stuck in it for a long time. That's the last thing I remember from that night. The next night, I woke up with the man right above me, and the last thing I remember about him is him jumping at my face with his jaws unhinged. I started hearing voices after that night. Everything paranormal happening started to become normal for me.
With his jaw unhinged?
Yeah, when I read that, it was like, ooh.
No, stop it. Hold on. No. We got honey bunches of nope out of that situation.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
Unhinged. That just sounds terrible. And imagine seeing that when you're 3 or 4. Yeah, like a snake. That's what I thought immediately, like a snake. Ooh. She then goes on to say, I'm not sure if you remember, but I used to have this old bedroom set, like the furniture and everything, and it had this mirror, and I'd always see this black shadow that would appear when I'd look into it in the corner. It did the same thing with my TV for a long time. I don't remember everything that happened to that house, and I'm glad I don't. And so she ended up saying afterwards that, like, she hopes that nobody's living in it, but I have some unfortunate news. I know who is living in it now. It's like a friend of my family's that is living in that place. And I just want to say this before we move on to our next haunted happening. I babysat for my uncle, like, when this happened, like, she would, like, her and her brother were, like, 4 or 5, 6, something like that, and I had to be maybe 13, 14, and so I had an English homework, right? And I'm sitting on the couch. They were supposed to be getting ready for bed. My older cousin, Malachi, or the older of the two, Malachi, he had to go and take a shower, so I said, all right,
Malachi.
Get to going. Yes, I believe he is.
That's an awesome name.
I believe he is named after Children of the Corn. I can't confirm, but I believe he is named after Children of the Corn. So I said, Malachi, go get in the shower. And so, like, he waddled over there again. He's like 6. And Brianna, she was clean, so I just sent her to bed, but she didn't want to go in her room. And I remember being like, what's the problem? And so I walk her into her bedroom. She's like cowering.
Big bad Renee.
And I was like, oh yeah, I don't like your room either, so you can go and sleep in your brother's room. And they had like bunk beds in her brother's room. I remember it like it was a little. I was like, why did she sleep in like 2 rooms? She has like 2 different beds. You know what I mean? So I now understand. Malachi gets out of the shower. He goes to his bedroom. He puts on his PJs. He jumps into his bed. And they're both in there with the TV on and the door shut. I go back to the living room. I finish doing my English homework. And all of a sudden, I hear the shower turn on. So I got up immediately and was like, this kid is playing games. So I went in there to yell at him, and the lights were off and just the shower was on. So I turned the shower off. I thought it was weird. I ran to the bedroom, checked on the kids, and went back to the living room again with my book kind of like this, peering up, so that if he happened to go down the hallway, I could catch him in the act, you know? And I really wish I hadn't done that, because as I'm doing this, I saw maybe, I'd say a waist-high mist shoot, like if I threw something. It ran so quickly, my brain almost couldn't process what was happening. Something darted across the hallway towards the bathroom. I heard my uncle's door open and shut, and I immediately went inside the kid's bedroom again to like look and see if maybe there was a logical explanation for this, and they weren't, because they were both dead asleep. My next move.
Don't say that.
Oh yeah, don't say dead asleep. They were perfectly alive, but they were asleep. I went in and I woke them up, and we went to my mom's house down the road, because I did not want to be in that house anymore. It's just, that house was freaky. I don't know what was going on with that house. This was in New Jersey. This all happened. And so I'm sorry to say someone still lives there to this very day, Brianna. They do. Our next haunted happening is from Nancy B. This is also a friend of mine that sent this in. And so I know the people that are involved in the story. And oddly enough, I had never heard this story from them. So Nancy B says, when we first moved to Las Cruces, New Mexico, we lived in a house we called the Leaky House. Sounds kind of nice, actually. Montana and Joey would not play, never mind sleep, in their room. So we got the Toy Story Woody room guard, and he would say stuff like, there's a snake in my boot, and hold it right there. He was like a little doll, I guess.
Hey,
he had little... Right. My bad. There's a snake in my boot, and hold it right there.
All right.
His little marionette arm would flail around and it was motion activated. One of the first nights on guard, Woody went off, and both of the kids came running into my room saying, Woody is talking to me, and they were scared of him. They continued to sleep with me every night until we moved out of that place. Also, Jesse, her older son, had lived in his own room, and he had kept our dog Rex in there with him. Rex would not go in the kids' room. The one time that he did, he ended up peeing immediately and also took a dump on the floor.
That's like you.
Sad. So, one morning, Jesse had to be at work at Albertsons. He had washed his clothes the night before, and he was going to put them in the dryer when he woke up. But when he did wake up, he discovered that the washing door was open, and therefore his clothes were just sitting in water, meaning the cycle stopped, right? So he came busting into my room and asking me why I stopped the washer, and I told him that I hadn't touched it. This would constantly happen in this house while we lived there. The scariest moment of all, though, was the morning I was making breakfast and the kids were in the living room. And I was talking to Jesse about the washer. And all of a sudden, a big, heavy glass jar of candy, probably weighing about 5 to 7 pounds, flies over my head and lands behind me on the tile. It broke into a million pieces. That's how I felt. I was like, no! It broke into a million pieces. I watched the thing fly over my head and land on the floor. Jesse saw it too. It scared the bejeebers out of me. These sort of things continued on even after we moved into a new house. The situation with the washer door continued on, and Joey's favorite toy, which was a Goldberg wrestling toy, began talking to him too. So I had to hide it in the closet to prohibit that from happening. Later, when Jesse moved out, we think that the poltergeist followed him. Jesse moved into a casitas up on a big Indian mound, and as he and his girlfriend Amber watched TV, they would always see their shoes move from one place to another. Amber said she never liked that place to begin with, and so they moved. And I had asked her, I said, okay, that's a wonderful story. Not like it's a wonderful story. I was like, that's a really cool story. I said, do you know if Jesse is still experiencing hauntings from this poltergeist? And she said that she just assumed that it had stopped because he stopped talking about it, but she wasn't sure, and that she would ask him. So we might have an update on this story for our next stream. But really, really creepy. I can't imagine watching an object weighing at least 7 pounds, fly across the room. It must have been horrifying. Dusty, any input on our haunted happenings for the stream?
No. No.
Okay. Great.
I can say that I'm sure, for reasons that, they couldn't just leave, but they lasted longer. The first one, the house with the shadow people, they lasted way longer than I would have.
Yeah, my uncle used to see stuff in there all the time too. My grandpa, my uncle, I saw something, my brother. It's just like craziness. All right, so that will lead us into our first story of the night, which is what, Dusty? Tell them.
Oh, Elizabeth Bathory. Yeah.
Bathory, yes.
Bathory. You have to sound sophisticated when you say Bathory.
Yes, Bathory.
Okay, no, that's too much. Okay. No, but Elizabeth Bathory, yeah, she is famous. You've probably heard of her at some point. If you haven't, you've probably heard of maybe some kind of pop culture reference or something that alludes to who she is. We'll get to why. But she was a Hungarian noblewoman, and she was born in August of 1560. She actually holds a Guinness Book of World Records she probably doesn't know this. I don't think she knows this, but yeah, she holds a record for the most prolific female murderer. Yeah.
Look at that forehead. That's a forehead that looks like it's killed people.
All right, so her victims are usually young peasant women until later she actually moved on to noblemen's daughters, and we'll get to that too. But when she went and she was tried for anywhere. This is the low end of possibilities to the high end here. Anywhere from 35 to 600 young women that she murdered.
Wow.
A big jump.
30, yeah. That's a big gap there.
Yeah, they're like, we think why it might have been 600, but it could also have been 35.
Well, from what I read, they're saying with those numbers, they know for sure she killed people.
Oh yeah.
But because documentation was not great, they don't know how many people, whoever eyewitness accounts, and from the people that were involved in the case, there might be up to 650. That's kind of what was the whole spiel. It's not that like they're like it could be 35, it could be 650. Like it wasn't a toss up, a roll of the dice.
No, I say it was 600.
Yeah, there wasn't.
Yeah. Well, anyway, her span of crimes were about 1590 to 1609. She only reason she stopped is because she got caught.
Yeah.
Yeah, red-handed. But
Mm.
we'll get to that. She it was believed, and it's not confirmed, but it was believed that her uncle actually instructed her in Satanism as a child.
Yeah.
And her aunt in sadomasochism. So she's got quite a family here to go off of. And then you have to kind of wonder, wow, why did she end up killing people? But
yeah, there was a lot of speculations that I was reading on why she actually killed people. I'm sure you're gonna mention one of them. I don't want to spoil anything, but there was
one of the reasons is they probably made fun of her forehead.
Probably. But to talk about the epilepsy words, Renee. Talk about the epilepsy.
This episode, I think you had one there just for a second.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So apparently, when people do weird things, they're epileptic. I don't know. That's just what.
That's like the diagnosis before modern medicine. They just
I don't
something
know.
that was out of the ordinary. They thought, yeah.
I don't know what's going on. She's eating spiders. I think she's having a seizure.
Well, I was just gonna say with Annalise Michelle in our last live stream, we talked about her and demonic possession. They immediately were like, "Oh, she's eating spiders. She's drinking her urine. Oh, well, she's having seizures.
Her
epilepsy.
EEG is totally fine, but she's epileptic. We're gonna say she's epileptic.
So this was like a common thing they said. So they did think Elizabeth was epileptic, and tell the people what they told her to do for her epilepsy. I thought this was interesting.
Interesting, Renee? Is that what you're gonna call it? Okay, so what they prescribed her in that time period was to take the blood and skull fragments of healthy deceased people.
Yep.
So yeah, not a sick dead person, but a healthy dead person.
A healthy dead person. They would crush up the skull, put it into blood, and tell her to rub it on her lips, and that it would make her feel better. But because of the way in which she kills people, it kind of like cancels out. It's like that can't be why she was killing people. They can't just say it was soothing her epilepsy. Go ahead, keep telling. Talk to them. Talk to the people about a Bathory.
I say that just Bathory. Sounds like a big excuse there, like a trying to hide it. No, she just needs it for her health, So, but there is a huge bug flying around me. I'm sorry. I'm not epileptic. I'm just trying to get it away. Yeah, but that's, if you think about it, she had kind of a strange start. They're saying it's totally okay for her to rub dead
which most serial killers have, yeah.
I guess, yeah. To just rub a dead person's blood on her face to feel better. But she ended up getting married really young. Well, I was 15, I guess. That's young for us, but normal.
Well, she was engaged at the age of like 10.
10 or 11, yeah.
Crazy.
Bear with me here. Count Frank Nad-City. Nad-City, yes.
Yeah.
Who was also a man of nobility. And actually, a funny thing is, supposedly he assisted her in some of the crimes that she did against these women, and there's some sources that say that he actually, just to please her, built her a torture chamber to her specifications.
Yep.
So yeah, and but it also said that he kind of held her back a little bit, because once he died in the early 1600s, that she got worse. So they think he also kind of kept her on a leash there. But fun thing that I just learned is that she was a woman of many suitors while her husband was
Yeah.
away, but she actually had a baby with another man. And here we go again. Let's just feed into her, you know, pastime here. And apparently her husband found out and had that man castrated and then torn apart by dogs.
Well, that does not sound like a good time at all.
Well,
No.
not for the affair man, the lover, but
No,
I'm sure
definitely
I'm sure
not.
he had a
That's
great time.
not. Well, I was gonna
Yeah.
say Bathory and Nada Civa probably enjoyed that,
Yeah.
but that's
Yes.
crazy. Yeah, she was big on torture. That's the big thing. Then they were making a case against the fact that she killed 650 people. They were like, oh well, she did it for medicine, but she tortured people. I mean, I was reading that she burnt people's hands off. These are little
Hold on,
children we're
wait.
talking about.
Let me just
Okay.
hold on. We got a list here. So here are some of the things that she's accused of doing to these people. Um, so burned with metal sticks, kind of like an iron, like a big metal stick. One of the things that it said actually terrifies me. I don't think it's super appropriate to say where she
Okay.
sometimes put those metal sticks.
Okay. We'll just say where
So
the
yeah,
sun
I'm not
don't
gonna.
shine.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
Keeping it
say it.
PG.
Yeah, we'll keep it there. But yes, with hot metal sticks,
Yeah.
ironed soles of their feet, stuck them in
Wow.
ice water, like a bucket of ice water, kind of to their neck outside, and let them freeze to death.
Wow.
Covered them in honey and left them outside for bugs, bees, ants, anything to eat alive.
I thought that was interesting too because we talked about Madame Lalaurie on this show, and Lalaurie did the same torture tactic to the slaves that she tortured. She would cover them in honey and black ants and let the black ants eat their flesh while they screamed in pain, and it was a source of enjoyment for her. So,
well, she clearly didn't have the best role model here. We
no.
know who she looked up to. Um, covered in honey. She stuck pins under their fingernails, like pins and
Oof.
needles, right? You ever get like a
Ow.
splinter there? That's the worst.
That
Pins.
made me cringe.
She beat and stabbed them. I should have started with that one. She beat and stabbed them because that's like the least
Yeah, I was gonna say
shocking.
that's like, oh, okay.
All right, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she stitched their lips together sometimes and just,
Wow.
yeah, they would like starve to death. Here we go. This is where we get interest.
And
Well,
they had proof of all this because when she was arrested, they found hundreds and hundreds of live victims with all of these things that Dusty's talking about, with the
yeah.
lips, with the burnt hands, with the iron feet. They found all of this. So
They found even more buried too. She would chain
yeah.
them up. Yeah, Jennifer, she does sound like a woman I would spend my weekend with, I think, right? Maybe
No,
not. But
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go
Oh,
whatever you were gonna say.
no, you got it. All right.
All right.
All right. She bit chunks of their flesh off.
Yeah.
It says she even made one poor girl cook and eat her own flesh. And she bathed, here we go, she bathed in the blood of young women because she thought it kept her youthful.
She drank it too.
She would drink it sometimes too. And it's funny because we also heard what the average age for the kind of feeding into her delusions. There we go. There was a word.
Delusions.
Feeding into her delusions. I guess so. She lived to be pretty old. For that time period, she died at close to 60. She was 50 something. She died close to 60.
Yeah.
And I think the average age then was 30s, maybe.
Yeah, like 30s.
Yeah, so
30s.
Maybe there's something to this actually.
And
I shouldn't make jokes like that because I'll end up like your next person that you're going to talk about.
Right. So I know that she's often compared to Vlad the Impaler, who would later inspire like the Dracula series by Bram Stoker. I honestly think Bathory is a little bit worse than Vlad the Impaler. For the Impaler, words her name. For those that don't know who,
so actually, really quick. I'm just gonna wrap this up so you can go ahead. But yeah, her pretty much because of her nobility, her crimes were ignored. People knew that she
Yeah.
was doing these things to peasant women, to slaves, but they kind of turned away. They were like, well, she's
It's
rich
peasants.
and
Yeah,
she's noble, so you know.
totally.
So
They
it
did
was
that.
ignored until like 1609. And eventually she started to kill the daughters of noblemen, and that is kind of when the King Matthias, I think it is, um,
Hmm.
decided to intervene. So he intervened, and her and four servants. Actually, I think it was supposed to be like a former nurse of hers and something. Four
Yep.
servants, yeah, got arrested and tried in 1611. This is where when they went in to arrest her, they found cowering servants, people chained to the walls, bodies buried, um, everything that you were saying, and where you um, in the act, right? They caught her red-handed. There you go, because
That's where that term comes from. That's the term that was used in court on during her trial. They said she was caught red-handed. Like he actually
red-handed.
caught her with bloody hands.
Yeah.
So,
All the fun things that you never knew came from. Yeah. But yeah, they found people chained and tortured. She was, yeah, so it was quite a sight that they found, and she was arrested, and the servants eventually were executed, but
mhm.
she, because of her nobility and her family's name, and they kind of pulled some strings, she didn't actually, she escaped execution, but she ended up getting confined to her chambers,
Yep.
which is a tower, like in her castle, what is all bricked
Yep.
up. There was
Cash
only,
Tice Castle.
yeah, what was that?
It's called the Cash Tice Castle. That's where she was imprisoned. That's like, it's still like a thing today that you can
Yeah,
visit. But
yeah, yeah. But
mhm.
then they only gave her slits. There was slits for a little bit of air and food for her, nothing else. And she ended up dying 3 or 4 years later in 1614, 3 years later, um, complaining of cold feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She apparently said to a guard, she like knocked on her little bricked in door thingy. Maybe she stuck her hand out the slit and was like, "Hey,
Excuse me.
excuse me." And she said, "Sir, I have cold feet." And the guy was like, "You're fine. Go to sleep, you crazy bat." And so she ended up being dead the next morning. Maybe he should have paid more attention.
Think they were upset about that? Yeah.
Probably
I mean,
not.
she, so why?
Uh,
What is cold feet like? Other than running out when you're
so
running, I don't know. Like,
what I thought was perhaps because there wasn't clear indication on how she died, they just said the cold feet thing. Maybe she had a blood clot. It's possible. If you know what this could have meant in old English terminology, you can tell us in the comments below. But she dies of cold feet. Now her tower. This is still a place that you can actively visit in Slovakia or Hungary, right? Um, and I know that in 1984 that the one tower crumbled, but her tower where she was imprisoned is still there. And do you know if they've had any hauntings or sightings of her?
yeah, actually, the people she killed, of course, they would say there are again black mists, right? But transparent, like humanoid figures. They would see. Sometimes people say that there was a faceless woman standing in one of the windows of the tower.
Ooh,
They think maybe that would be Elizabeth herself, the Countess herself.
faceless.
Yeah, but they faceless. That's ironic considering how famous she is now, right? The name that
Yeah,
she's given herself, just faceless now.
the
Um,
Duchess of Blood.
it's almost poetic, right? Right. But yeah, the apparitions in the windows. And apparently there's a statue, like what wooden,
Yeah, it's a wooden
um,
statue.
of her in the square, the plaza square of the castle. And apparently they see a young woman crying, occasionally crying by the statue, and they think maybe that might be one of her victims, which is
Right.
interesting. But I feel like there's got to be way more than that. There's only one.
I think there is. See, when I did the research on the actual hauntings, I read that there were so many spirits in the area that when you step just like going through the forest, if you have to like take a train there or something, that during the train ride you can start to feel the negative energy as you head towards Tice Castle. So yeah, that's crazy. I know Jim had mentioned that there's like a tunnel system that you can still visit to this very day. They encourage ghost hunting. Given the story, they encourage the ghost hunting. So yeah,
Hey, when the world gets back on its feet, I think we should go.
I
Are
would
you
love
down
to.
Would you? Are you sure?
We're gonna move on to our next story. I'm gonna ignore you. This is about vampires. Now I know, again, some of you guys are rolling your eyes at me, but we're gonna talk about vampires because this is really strange and it kind of fits into the whole haunting thing. And I think that some of you guys will get a kick out of this. So I'm gonna butcher some of these names because they are Russian. But this is a story about Kilsijevo.
Yep.
Kilsijevo,
Yep.
Serbia. And this is a man named Peter Blagojevic. That wasn't that bad. It was a good pronunciation. Now, Peter Blagojevic, was born in a small village of Kisiljevo, Serbia. And Peter dies suddenly in 1725. It is unclear what killed him, but legend goes that perhaps he had some sort of short malady, like a fever or whatnot.
Short malady.
After his death and funeral, locals claim that Peter came to visit them at night from the grave. And every night, 9 villagers would turn up dead. So, or rather, they would be like gasping for air and life. And on their deathbeds, they would claim that they saw Peter standing at their bedside. He would strangle them and try to bite them. And this went on for 8 days. This went on for a while. Think about that. 9 people for 8 days before the town finally like bands together and does something. Now, before the town bands together and does something, Peter's wife claimed that after his death, that he appeared in their bedroom and oddly enough asked for his shoes. Now, what would a vampire need with his shoes? I cannot tell you. That information was not present, but she was so
I do not know.
I do not know. She was so frightened by his appearances that the town started like heckle her about her vampire husband that she packed up her family and moved to another village. Now, there was a little bit more to her just being heckled. You see, her son ends up dying. Her young son, like 10-year-old son, ends up dying because allegedly Blagojevic massacred him after the son refused to find him food. And so that's part of the reason she leaves too, because she doesn't want to end up dead like her poor son. The villagers say, that's enough. We've had it with Peter. And so they go tell the local priest that they want to exhume his body and that they think he's a vampire and they want to have a word with him. And the local priest is like, no, you can't do that. That's disrespectful. But after a while,
so is him killing my kids. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I guess they like hold the priest down and are like, we're doing this with or without you. So the priest gives in and says, fine, but everything needs to be recorded, like written down. Yeah. So they exhume the body and they find Peter that he had fresh facial hair, manicured nails, not like he has French tips, but just like his tails were clipped back like he had been biting his nails maybe off. But more strangely, there were no signs of decomposition whatsoever. He wasn't blue. He did not look dead. He looked like he was sleeping. So,
and visiting your local salon every week.
Yes, getting his manicure done, evidently. It is recorded. This was written down. They have documentation of this, historical documentation, that they stake Peter's dead heart and blood began to pour from the wound in his chest, from his mouth and his ears. After that, all of the deaths in the village stopped completely. Nobody died in that village unless it was from natural causes after that.
Short maladies. How long was he dead for? When
I think he was dead for about 2 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks he had been dead, and he didn't look dead at all, which is like crazy because he was already buried and put in the ground. There should be some signs that he's dead. You know what I'm saying? But there's not. So
what was his name again? That was
Peter Blagojevic.
Yeah, it's different every time you say it.
I know. Peter Blagojevic. Yep. Centuries after the staking of Peter Blagojevic, the village of Kisiljevo has used the story to build a tourist empire. The story is still passed on from generation to generation. I do want to mention that there are a lot of cases of vampires that exist. Like, there's one that is very similar to the story I just told of a man named Arnold Paulo, who after his death, he is written down as responsible for at least 16 people's lives. Like, he killed 60 people from the grave with eyewitness testimonies that were documented. That story is reportedly so heavily documented that it is believed to have started the spread of vampire awareness in New England.
Oh my god, can we get our own like ribbons for vampire awareness?
Yes, vampire awareness. So it's so funny that when you look back at New England's history, you always see the first thing is like the witch hunt cases, like the Salem witch trials, right? You never really hear too much about the vampires, because I think people just think it's bogus. But they're looking at it from like Dracula's standpoint, where they think there's a guy going around biting people's neck, and he's just a random guy that likes blood. But these are people that haunted. These are like ghosts that came and killed you, pretty much. So it's really not that crazy when you put it into perspective like that. Another case that is super popular, but it's in New England, it's in like North America, is that of Nellie Vaughn. She was from Greenwich, Rhode Island. If I said that wrong, you may yell at me in the comments. West Greenwich, Rhode Island. It was published all over the newspapers across the country in 1889. Her tombstone reads, "To this very day, I am waiting and I am watching for you." Now, she was her tombstone still reads to this very day. This is how hardly they believe that this girl was a vampire. When she was dead, they decided to inscribe on her headstone, "I am waiting and I am watching for you."
They decided, or like she told them, like, this is what I want written on my tomb, and you should figure it out.
No, I don't think she was like, "Hey, if I die and I become a vampire, put that." Cool.
If
no,
I
don't
die
think
and I become a vampire.
I don't think that happened, but that's what they put on it. So she was as big as a deal as Mercy Brown from New England as well. Some of y'all know that story. Some of y'all don't. Some of you need to look it up because it's very, very interesting. Obviously, these cases are different from that of Elizabeth Bathory, Vlad the Impaler, and something called clinical vampirism, which is where people start to want to suck the blood of other individuals, like living people. They just get a taste for blood all of a sudden, and so yeah, that's been called, like, scientists will try to say it's just a vitamin deficiency, but I've never once wanted to drink somebody's blood.
Hold on. I have like since I was a kid, severe vitamin deficiency. You don't see me walking around like
taking bites out of people.
Yeah.
Glittering.
Yeah. I mean,
so yeah, what do you guys think about vampires? Like, maybe you've had, I don't want to be like, maybe you've had an experience with a vampire, but if you have, please, like, tell us about it, right? Maybe you know about maybe you have a family member that was a vampire. Maybe you know about Abraham Lincoln, who was a supposed vampire hunter. Tell us in the comments below. But we're going to move on to our local story of the night. And this local story is about the Love Tree Cottage. So Jim is going to pull up the picture of the Love Tree Cottage, and we're going to go ahead and tell you about our personal experience. We were lucky enough to work out of the Love Tree Cottage for years. I think that every single guide that worked there, even our owner, has had some sort of strange phenomena, some sort of strange experience. Yes, our owner, Diane. Yes, our boss, Diane. I think she's even experienced something strange. Now, I don't want to say that the people that have worked there, they all now believe in ghosts, but a lot of them have had some sort of unexplainable thing happen to them while working there. Dusty, will you go ahead and tell them about your story with the door?
With the door, Dusty's door, yeah. So it was okay. I was in the building and I was just sitting there reading a book. It was quiet day. And it was just me. I was alone, completely alone at the desk there. And we have like a screen door, and it was so the main door was open and just the screen door would be closed. And I remember in the quiet, it was dead quiet, right? I heard what sounded like somebody walk from the back hallway, into the parlor next to me, and then into the room I was in, and stop right next to me. And it was kind of it was, I was like, okay. So I called you. I called you. You were the first one. I was like, Renee, I think there's something in here. Something just I heard
Somebody
footsteps.
here with me.
Yeah, it's right
Yeah.
next to me. And then oh my gosh, you were like, oh wow, um sorry,
I had a dream
does
about
the
you.
ex-wife count as a vampire? That was
I
sorry,
saw
anyway,
that
yeah.
too.
Yeah, you said I had a dream about you in that building, and I'm like, don't tell me that. I don't want to be
Don't
in
tell me
here.
now.
You can't say that to me when I'm like, there's a man standing next to me that doesn't actually exist. He's not there.
So we
But
had the
and
opportunity. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, it's fine. You asked me to tell a story and then you interrupted. It's okay.
I know I'm the worst.
I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. I'll make it quicker. Yeah, so I was on my way to go sit outside because I didn't want to sit inside anymore, and the front door legit slammed shut in front of me. And
Yep, I remember you telling me about too.
I stood there for a few minutes. I tried so hard to make it happen again. I was like, maybe if I step here, the door is gonna close, and it just. So I did sit outside the rest of that week.
Yeah, I remember that when we did the paranormal lockdown. So we have these videos on our Facebook that you can watch our updates from the paranormal lockdown. We didn't do a fourth update. We were too tired and we forgot because we were there until literally like 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
No, we ended up.
but we were.
It ended at 4, but we ended up staying until 6 because there's so much going on.
Oh my God, it was
We
good.
caught things on the spirit box. We could literally hear somebody running down the stairs at one point. Just we heard the door in the back open at one point. Just a bunch of crazy stuff occurred.
Crying,
that
yeah.
we documented. We heard crying that we documented in those videos on our Facebook page. So if you do want to know all the evidence that occurred there, you can definitely go ahead and watch those separately. I do want to talk about that swinging door because we both had an experience with the swinging door, and you were here
I
for
think
this
I mentioned
one.
mine last time, kind of. Michael, walk by it, but you probably don't want to walk in it at any point.
I know that Jim and you both witnessed this, so I'm not crazy. Stacy too saw this directly, so she can testify for me. But we had like a swinging door that led into the living room, and then there was a back door. So the back door was always locked, and the swinging door led to like the parlor area where we would do our indoor tours and whatnot. And so we're standing in there, me and another tour guide. We did a Halloween special where you got an hour-long tour and then a 30-minute investigation with me. And so we weren't getting a whole lot on the investigation part. It was kind of dead, and the spirit box started to growl. So I was like, oh, man, that's cool. Look at that, guys. I told you, there's crazy stuff going on in here. Well, then all of a sudden, we hear from behind the swinging door, the back door unlock, slam shut, footsteps walking around in the kitchen area, going into like the closet that was behind the door, and then it just stopped. And then we heard the door slam again and the lock twist. So I immediately, as soon as we started like to imagine what was going on back there, I thought it was like Matt maybe or somebody that had come in after their tour. I like pushed the door open as the locking occurs, and there's just nothing there. There's nobody standing at the back door. There's nobody there. The lock is turned. Everything is still in the room. So I ran outside like a giant baby and got Jim, who also agreed that there was nobody in the area that could have caused that to happen. And I believe we looked at the surveillance footage the next day, and we confirmed that, yes, that was a paranormal experience, and that
I remember that. I was outside talking to the gym.
To the gym.
I was outside talking
Yes.
to Jim when you, Stacy came out. She was like, Jim?
Yeah, I know.
You
She was
mean-
like, Jim. Yeah, poor Stacy.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of spirits in that place. You had Mr. Frederick that sat at the front of the parlor. There was like a special chair that he liked to have. We used to hear him through the spirit box a lot. There was
nice.
Emily. Frederick was nice. Emily was not nice. Tell them about your story with Emily, because I know I was on that tour too, but
yeah. And we did really quick from the lock-in. I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted, but hi, Daphne. I'm so glad you guys are watching. Anyway, yeah, we were doing a paranormal investigative tour, and it was 2 women and their husbands. It was just the 6 of us, because it was us and the 4 of them. And I remember we came back into the building, and she's sitting in one of the chairs. She never really told us that she could see things or feel things or anything. She just kind of kept doing it throughout the tour. And Yeah, she legit, she had the spirit box in her hand. It's kind of like a radio, and if sorry, there was a bug. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, it was a kind of like a radio, and it uses white noise frequencies to talk to you, I guess. But
Yeah.
she was holding it in her hand, sitting in the chair, and she just straight up said, "There's that hallway. There's an office in the back, and there's a closet in the office." And we're like, "A
Mm-hmm.
closet? Is it a closet in the office? I don't know."
We didn't even know. Yeah.
Yeah, we ended up looking at the closet.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, and I remember the spirit box was still on and it was in our hand, and when we opened the closet, she was saying that there's a sad woman, a really sad woman in that closet, like she's just distraught. And we opened the door, and the spirit box, almost instantly something wailed, cried, and it said, "I'm bad." And it was, oh my gosh, like I left. I was like, "You got this, Renee. I gotta go."
Yeah.
If I leave
It was,
Renee to something, you know it's bad, because Renee's
and I remember that a lady was like, "Don't move, don't be scared." And I was like, "Girl, I'm
no,
out here. I'm scared out of my
too
mind."
late.
But yeah, guys, that's the story of the Love Tree Cottage. Please go and take pictures as you walk by the place. People always capture strange anomalies hanging out on the porch and in the window. And I know that I think it's like a restaurant now. So
Yeah.
just great places around town. Support your local business. When we open back up for tourists, come and visit us. Thank you for watching.
That was the tame version of that building. We had so much more we could
Yes.
talk about.
Yeah, we could do a whole live stream on the Love Tree Cottage. There's a lot that happened. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please tune in for our stream on Friday night. We'll be talking more about ghoulish stories. We are doing a blog during the week, so if you missed our stream, you can always watch the video. Check out the blog done by our guide Morgan. It's really great with the help of her little friend Alfred. Have a great evening, and goodbye.
Hey, thanks for having me again.